over the last year?
Over the last year, I think we've learned that there's still a lot more to learn. There's a few unknowns. Among them, how much is COVID infection contributing to overall immune dysregulation, meaning assaults on our immune system? We don't know how to characterize the disease. Is it a respiratory disease? Is it a vasculitis? Is it a neurological disease? Is it all of the above? Is it hepatitis? It could be all of those things. We still don't know really what the best way forward is for planetary control. That's a policy decision. And frankly, a lot of the unknowns have to do with the sociological aspects of the disease, not so much about the biological aspects. Is how do we, as a species, as a civilization, deal with this kind of threat now that it's no longer existential? It's more a management challenge.
Hmm. Well, looking in terms of that, the question for this article is sort of, will 2023 be the year that COVID becomes endemic? Um, First of all, how do we even determine if a virus or a disease is endemic?
Well, endemicity is really defined locally. Planetary wise, it's difficult to do so. And the official definition is, does the reproduction number remain around one for an extended period of time? And globally, that's not going to be the case. It's going to be heterogeneous around the world. And we're not really measuring cases, so we'll never know for sure. We'll know that from wastewater, possibly. We could look at the death rate to determine some aspect of endemicity. And at a global level, that does appear to be happening. However, some big changes have happened, in particular, the policy change in China. So we're looking at 10% of the human race about to be infected over the next handful of months. We're looking at an enormous number of deaths, possibly in the millions, happening in China, unless other things come into play. So that's going to really change the numbers a lot. It also means the opportunity to create new variants is going to be much higher in the next few weeks and months as the Chinese experience unfolds, and that will change the game entirely. So I don't mean to be overly pessimistic about this, but I don't think these things are pointing in a good direction for our management of the disease, given particularly the state of China, and given also our response in the West around a laissez-faire approach to COVID management. So I think it's likely that a new immune evasive variant will emerge, causing further waves. But the good news is that the vaccines continue to work against the worst outcomes. And if we continue to boost and we don't see any bad effects from boosting, then the ability to curtail transmission should be maintained to some extent. As well, infection plus vaccination, hybrid immunity, does seem to offer a high level of population immunity, but that wanes. Um, so the wave-like behavior will continue. What I'm observing is with each additional wave, the peaks are lower, but the troughs are higher. So we're entering some sort of oscillating equilibrium that is kind of endemic. I don't mean to go off too much on a tangent here, but one of my real worries is the way the word endemic is used. It seems to be an excuse by policymakers to do nothing. Just because something is endemic, hey, I guess, throw our hands up, we can't do anything about this. High levels of endemicity are not good. And there are things we can still do to push those numbers down if we want to.
So then it sounds like it's obviously going to be a different picture depending on where in the world you are. So do you think that in Canada it will be endemic then?
Some parts, for some parts of the year, it will be. And for other parts of the year and other parts of the country, it won't be. Overall, I don't, well, it depends on so many things. I don't think so, because vaccine booster uptake is low, and we're going to see waning immunity as immunity offered by infection wanes in the next few months as well. Um, However, overall, I tend to be an optimist, and because we have the tools to combat this, if we choose to use them, and these tools include vaccination, strategic mask wearing, and the therapeutics like Paxlovid, because we have these tools, it shouldn't feel like an onerous burden as it did in early 2020. It comes down to what are people and policymakers willing to do to provide us that opportunity.
So then, I mean, I guess would you be comfortable saying that the more emergency phase of the pandemic is behind us, or do you think that that could also change?
That could always change if a particular new variant arises, a variant of high consequence that really challenges our ability to detect, treat, and prevent this disease. If that happens, then we're in trouble. Or if immunity wanes all of a sudden everywhere, then we're in trouble. Or if it turns out that immune injury is a real thing and it's more prevalent than we think, then we're in trouble. And again, even the combination of hybrid immunity, which is a combination of infection and vaccination, that's overall a good thing. But it might not be a good thing because it requires a lot of people to get infected, leading to post-viral consequences. So that's not good. So to define the emergency phase, is this an existential threat to our healthcare system? No. What is an existential threat to our healthcare system is the systemic things that have resulted from this in 2020, like the number of healthcare workers that are no longer available and the stressed out resources in general. So in that sense, the emergency phase is behind us. But the long-term management phase is staring at us in the face, and that's probably harder in the long run.
Hmm. You mentioned that we're not measuring, we don't have the same surveillance that we once did. How does that impact our ability to continue to fight this and measure whether or not we're in
It,
endemic phase or not?
it really affects our ability to measure, without question. But again, there are other tools like sentinel surveillance and wastewater surveillance and hospital admission surveillance, which are a hand-waving ability to get some sense. At a societal level, what it does, it hobbles our ability to explain to the public the status of the disease. So if you don't know anyone who's hospitalized or dying of it, then you're not going to believe that anything's untoward. If someone suggests to you, maybe we should be doing more indoor mask wearing, there isn't any data, overt, convincing data for them to be convinced by anymore. So, except for hospital usage data. So that reduces all of the arguments down to what we see in the hospital, which is unfortunate because the argument should be about what we see in the community, but we don't have a sense of what's happening in the community.
Hmm. Um, do you think that, because of all of these different factors, do you think that, and if we do get to a point of endemicity, that's the right word, way to put it,
It is
does
the right
that
way.
mean we sort of have we kind of lost the battle or lost the war when it comes to COVID-19?
Well, the boat has sailed in terms of elimination. There was an opportunity early on for that, so that's definitely out of the water. COVID zero is no longer possible. Um, and there was an opportunity to push the levels of endemicity as low as possible. That boat might have sailed as well. What remains are the biotechnological solutions, which means improved vaccines. The mucosal vaccine that other countries are trying, but somehow in the West we have the market demand for additional vaccines has diminished, and so the incentive for drug companies to invest a lot of priority in this has also diminished, which is unfortunate because a good quality mucosal vaccine could really put a dent in this. And then if we did have a mucosal vaccine, then we're back to the challenge of getting enough people to take it. Uh, so the fight is not over. We shouldn't throw up our hands and say, you know what, this disease has got the best of us. We're going to be suffering generations of possible immune injury and months and possibly years of many people having long COVID. It shouldn't have to happen that way. And I do have some faith that new treatment options are coming down the pipeline as well. Like I hear from people all the time who are suffering long COVID and don't know what to do about it. I think this has to be a priority for our biotech sector, as it will be for our insurance sector and for other sectors as well. So I think many eyes of society are now turning to the long COVID post-viral syndrome aspects of this. And so there will be some progress on this.
Hmm. And just to check it, you mentioned mucosal vaccines. If we had one of those, that could prevent people getting the virus in the first place, right?
Yeah, and that would stop transmission, at least to a very large extent, and that wouldn't make the disease go away entirely, but it would make it really controllable, like measles or chickenpox or things like that, where they still exist. Those diseases are endemic, but they don't make the news and they don't challenge our everyday lives if we choose to get the vaccine. So that's the goal, I think, is to get us to that point where the disease is all around us, but it's not something we have to think about. Public health thinks about
So what do you see for the year ahead in terms of
it.
COVID-19?
Last year I made a prediction that this year the words we should care about are nosocomial and base rate fallacy. And that was true. So the base rate fallacy is the inability of people to understand that more vaccinated people are getting hospitalized simply because there are more vaccinated people. Doesn't mean vaccines don't work. And nosocomial means people are getting infected in the hospital. Um, I don't know if those should have been the key words. I think this coming year, the key words might be immune dysregulation. Hope it isn't, um, and possibly variant of high consequence. I hope that's not the case. I really hope that's not the case. On a more positive spin. And by the way, what I mean by that is we rank variants as variants of interest, variants of concern, and variants of high consequence. We haven't seen variants of high consequence yet, just variants of concern. That's a good thing. And if a variant of high consequence emerges, well, that's a bad thing. I like to think that this coming year, the magic words will be mucosal vaccine. There you go.
That
Because
might be.
other countries have them, and if a full planetary push comes out for one, well, hey, that's wonderful progress.
And just finally, we're seeing a lot of people now. You're talking about the vaccines. We're about to go into the holidays. Is it too late to get a flu shot and a COVID booster to get the benefit?
It's never too late. Get one. It just means that you won't feel or experience the genuine advantages of it for 2, 3, 4 weeks. We should definitely get one. And while you're waiting for that to kick in, take other precautions. Improve your ventilation at home. Wear a mask in indoor settings. If you're symptomatic, then stay away from gatherings. If other people are symptomatic at a gathering, maybe don't go. Use rapid tests. This is really a criminally underused tool. They're not perfect, and they're less perfect now with Omicron, but they're still very useful. If you throw in symptom checks and a daily rapid test, you can reduce the likelihood of a transmission event substantially.
Hmm. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Yes, I don't want to be doom and gloom about this. I think, in general, the arc of history is bending in a positive direction when it comes to this disease. And I say so not because we've made good decisions, but because humanity as a whole ultimately tends to make the right choices around managing its own existential issues, climate change aside. So we have the tools to manage this. We just have to use them with the right amount of diligence and circumspection.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. Your insights are really valuable.